Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to a truly special online event today. It's called the Indigenous Way of Healing with Plants. Discover the medicines, rituals, and curandissimo traditions of Central and South America. My name is Stephen Dinan, and I am the founder and president of the Shift Network. And I'm really thrilled to be with you here because indigenous plant medicine traditions are really at the heart of how we heal ourselves and our world. I really believe that there is a wisdom that has been cultivated over millennia that really can be distilled in a different kind of relationship with the natural world. And we're going to get to go on a journey into that world with a remarkable teacher. Her name is Adriana Ayales. She's a rainforest herbalist and founder of Anima Mundi Herbals. She's taught for Shift before, very beloved, and has really been at the forefront of this revival and bridging of interest to more ancient life ways and modern in a way that really, I think, can bring so much benefit to ourselves and our planet. So, Adriana, thanks so much for coming back.
So great to be here again, Stephen. Thank you.
Well, I'm excited to dive in, and I do want to let everyone know right up front we have a brand new 5-week program with Adriana that's going to be launching soon that we'll talk about towards the end of the hour. It's called the Curanderos Apothecary. So if you get sparked by today, you're going to want to go further with her. So we'll share more about that at the end. So, Adriana, let's start our journey today with your journey into indigenous plant medicine traditions, apprenticing as a curandera. I really think that journey aspect of opening a world up is so important for all of us to know.
Yes, absolutely. Well, now I'm a clinical herbalist and I run Anima Mundi apothecaries around the US and also in Costa Rica, which is where I'm from. So, from a young age, to put it in a nutshell, when I was a little baby girl, my grandmother would come every Sunday to come sit with us and do essentially plant spirit meditations, or not plant necessarily, spirit meditations, where we would go into these deep trance states to witness the spirits of the home, cleansing of spaces, spirits of the land, what I like to call elemental beings. And at that time, I was around 7 years old. I had no idea what we were doing. I just thought it was fun and drinking tea with my grandma and my great aunt. And so at that time, I received a really profound initiation when I started seeing different ancestors and spirits within our home and spaces, even disharmonized spaces, which was one of the main intentions as to why we were even doing it. So they were teaching me on how to like sense energy, sense disharmony, and what to do. And at that time, we would do like from eucalyptus washes on the door frames, on the floor. We would like plant things in the garden to enhance more abundance and protection and things like that. So essentially that morphed over time. And by the time I was like a teenager, I realized that my personal power evolved more as an herbalist, even though my grandma was more as a seer, more of a clairvoyant. And I was like really wanting to be like her. I was like, I want my power to be like hers. But I loved how spirit at that time just taught me to work with plants and use plants in that way within administering healing processes. So essentially that evolved into me learning with different curanderos in South America, Mexico, Costa Rica, the US. And I just love it because now I feel like I've married many traditions into my current process through rites of initiation, connection, and relationship.
Hmm. It's a beautiful journey, and I'd love to hear a little bit of what's evolved as your worldview of understanding of sort of how to see working with herbs from this kind of wider perspective that you received from your grandmother and different curanderos and curanderas.
It's funny at that time, the personification of like the spirit that would appear would be so embodied and so human-esque in essence that I thought it would be like a person, let's say, tied to a place or a forest or something very specific. And then I came to see that it was spirit, like the spirit of plants manifesting themselves as like personas.
Hmm.
And that's when it really dawned on me that plants have these multidimensional abilities to be that. And although this sounds very woo-woo, it's a tradition that's been happening for millennia. The curanderos are the first doctors of humanity. And this is how they engage. They engage with plants in their ecosystem that allow them to unveil these incredible mysteries and know how to administer what plant for who, when, and why in very specific ways. Like even simple plants that you would think are almost culinary have been profoundly healing because they were assigned and given with invocation and rites of passage to a person with a very specific intention. So
Hmm.
it's never just like, oh, this plant will heal your heart. And although it can, the whole process and ancestral, tradition and practice is what allows it to be a true conduit for something bigger. So that's where you can see how plants are personas and they want to be treated as that, other than just like a mildly inanimate object to use for a symptom-based understanding.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
In our circles, it's often, I'd say, a little more common to talk about specific psychedelic medicines, ayahuasca, the plant spirits around those. But your experience is really that virtually all the different plant species have their own kind of persona or consciousness or intelligence field that you can engage with.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. If you see what science says now, it's like reality is 99.9% perceptive. It's not what we think of reality to be. So there is so much more to the energy of reality that we don't really understand, most of us. And it takes a whole process to really see that. So that's what I love about curanderismo. It really teaches you how to perceive energy in this multifaceted way,
Mhm.
other than just like, oh, this is kind of like the modern mind of like assigning things to symptoms in a very objective way, so this really allows for that porousness to understand how you can use energy through living beings of all kinds, including plants and
Mm.
forests and trees and so on, even soil.
So it sounds like there's a piece of working as a curandera that's about you're not like the locus of all the healing knowledge. You're sort of getting in right relationship or rapport with the plants, which are actually sort of have their own wisdom about what is needed as well.
Exactly. And that is the exact core of curanderismo. It's all about right relationship. And it's, when you go to a curandera or curandero, most of the times they ask you, you start your healing session and it's called a plática, like a heart to heart talk. And in that talk, you speak of where the disharmony happened that generated your chronic disease or imbalance in life, or let's say like bad luck or situations of life. And it's never an assessment of what they're diagnosing you with. It's more like an analysis of where your relationship is ruptured.
Hmm.
And that means relationship to community, relationship to your work, relationship to yourself, of course, how you speak to yourself, how you love yourself, relationship to the fifth element, as in like ether, the spirits of life, or God, so whichever word you choose to use. So all of these assessments of relationship is what a curandero really starts with when giving you, let's say, a healing session. So
Hmm.
that's where a relationship is a huge pillar in understanding the healing journey for the patient or the person.
That's a really fascinating shift of perspective. So you don't start with symptoms, you start with source, and then you kind of work downstream from there. So that's
Exactly.
really fascinating. So that also sort of implies that the thinking or the approach is that it's like the energy, the energetics are the primary causation behind the disease then.
Exactly. It's kind of like healer as gardener type of relationship versus healer as mechanic, which both are fully valid. Healer as gardener is more ancient traditions around the world. It's more an assessment of your ecosystem. How are you balancing your ecosystem in all ways,
Hmm.
physically, emotionally, and spiritually, all in one? Versus the mechanic is more the approach of like fix what's broken, which
Hmm.
can also be very useful if we're in a car accident or something major happens. Obviously, the mechanic approach can help heal a broken bone or something like that. So, but I think for the chronic potential of disease is, the healer as gardener is a much more holistic longevity perspective that can be truly the best path for the long run.
I love that. So, in some ways, a lot of the modern herbalist world is still a little bit operating from the mechanics paradigm. It sounds like I'm kind of reading into that a little bit, where you're sort of like, oh, here's the symptom, and here's the fix. Here's the wrench for that particular uh,
Exactly.
challenge. But so you might have the same symptoms, but very different herbal remedies. It sounds like.
Exactly, because most of the time, according to the curandero's perspective, is that when it's made physical, it's already the last stage
Hmm.
of the root problem. So they believe that for years you get notifications like, hey, something's out of balance. You better kind of like tune up here or receive maintenance. And that's where we have to refine our vehicle to receive this natural intuitive message in our own body.
Hmm.
So once it becomes physical, it's known to be that the disruption in relationship has been so prolonged that a physical manifestation has shown up.
Hmm.
And I think that's what's fascinating, because obviously there's accidents and things, but even to that point, when you speak to very clairvoyant curanderos, that clairvoyance is like their power, they really see how also the disruption of relationship led to that accident. It's like life also tried to break you. Yet because certain things were not taken into the change, it stopped you right there for the massive change to occur. So sometimes, that's where accidents can also be blessings, or sudden spontaneous disruptions of our life that, cause trauma. They're, for that reason, they're seeding that transformation in your life. And sometimes that's hard to, swallow. It's like a hard pill to swallow if it happens in your life. You're like, why me? Why is this happening to me? But the grief and trauma that unfolds from that really reveals such a profound healing path and awakening that's how it is perceived amongst the curandero community.
It also seems to imply like a much different time horizon in working with a particular challenge or disease, that you're not sort of like, oh, here's pop a pill, here's a fix. You're sort of, a gardener is really cultivating something over a long period of time. Maybe share a little bit about that arc of how a curandero is going to work with somebody over time.
Exactly. So there's many diagnostic tools, and I say diagnostic, even though that's not the word that they would choose. But there's many tools that allow for that process, So the plática is a classic process where it's like a heart-to-heart talk, which if you think about like modern doctors, you don't go to the doctor's office and have a heart-to-heart talk. You show up and you're like,
You don't in 15 minutes? In 15 minutes?
yeah. Yeah, you're like, these are my problems. I've had blah, blah, blah for X amount of time, So it's never like, okay, this is how I'm feeling. This is what happened before X and XYZ happened. It's more like symptom based, right? So that's where the heart to heart is huge, because that means that, certain blockages are already clearing just by that conversation. There's actually many times that curanderos say that one heart to heart talk healed the chronic disease because of the way that talk occurred, just by the certain prompting. So it's like talk therapy in modern day reality, yet with curandero foundations, right? More like hands-on healing in the moment, hugging, caressing, and more. Soaderas, which is like a classic of curandero. Soaderas are the ones that really do hands-on healing. They also do pláticas, the talk, while they're also like moving your body and aligning you. So it can be like talks with quote unquote massage, not quite. It's more like, it actually can be very painful when it's like an alignment. For example, like womb massage, Mayan womb massage is very classic, that as you're getting the talk, you go immediately into like realignment of your uterus or your spine that's also affecting your uterus. And so anyways, it can be multifaceted within the talk.
That's interesting. I've experienced a little bit of mind body work that was like, oh, that is not pleasant.
Right? Truly. It's like
Yeah,
Rolfing-ish,
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So at what point do you start? So it sounds like there's a whole practica, kind of like there's a heart to heart, the diagnostics, sort of working on the relational. At what point do you even start to consider to bring the plants and plant allies in?
Exactly. So most oftentimes from the get-go, you are prescribed with specific plants, and this is where specific dietary protocols are given. And this also translates to current modern medicine, but dietary protocols as to like what kind of cleansing you should be doing, what your body is needing in that moment. Let's say it's more of a nervous system restoration type of thing, or a grieving type of dietary protocol, depending on the imbalance that is witnessed. And from there, plants are assigned. And most of the times, even the plants that are assigned, like I was saying, they're very simple. Sometimes it's like rosemary tea. And some people might be like, rosemary tea is not going to do anything to me. But again, because of the rite of passage, the connection to that, plant in a deep energetic way from the curandero, you are receiving a transmission, and they're using the rosemary as an extension of themselves for the healing journey. And that's where you can really see that it's not just rosemary. It's something else that's
Interesting.
coming
So,
through the rosemary.
so there's an energetic kind of merger or kind of collaboration between the
Exactly. It's
Purandara
like an
and the.
agreement.
So
Yeah,
is it, you buy the same rosemary at the supermarket, it's not going to have the same effect as the rosemary that's been sort of
exactly.
consecrated.
Exactly. It's almost like the blessed power and access that the curandero has in agreement to the relationship to rosemary and others is transmitted through the healing session. So that's what's really fascinating to me, and witnessing it over time, how, even inanimate objects can be completely infused with energy and given a healing, power, and given to you for healing, so even like sticks of wood, a piece of rock, not necessarily a crystal, obviously gems as well. There's so many things that can be placed and given power to administer part of the healing process. And it's really fascinating, honestly. And this is where I love to see people that, come from the absolute opposite perspective and experience this type of healing. That's when they're like, I can't go back. There's something deeper here I need to understand.
Hmm.
And that's the beauty. Yeah.
As a curandera, it sounds like when you're working at that level of connection with each plant, then you have to really spend time cultivating that relationship before you're able to even administer, it sounds like.
Exactly. Yeah, that's where your own personal practice is essential. And it's also very common then, even the most experienced curanderos and curanderas fall out of relationship because of certain life circumstances. So it also goes in cycles. And, it's important that the antenna is refined continuously and the relationship is cultivated long term in so many ways, whether it's administration to patients, whether it's your own garden, how you, express that plant's desire into the world, etc.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It'd be great to hear a little bit about the different types of working with plants, the herbs, resins, just a little bit of like how you're relating to these different vehicles or delivery systems, working with different plants and why.
Yes. So, it reminds me a lot of like the different, let's say, diseases that are witnessed within the healing process. And so, for example, a resin, a bark, a root is associated depending on the disease witnessed. So in this case, which I know we've talked about in one of the previous classes, is like susto, which is like soul
Mhm.
loss, very much often associated to soul retrieval in Native American practice. And it's very similar in nature in how it's, administered or healed or observed and understood. But for example, soul loss is when, a part of your past, you had a trauma, whether it's small or large, and a piece of your soul is left in that timeline. But you go on with life. Some traumas, you can just kind of coexist with and live with, and you keep on going. And let's say 20 years later, you realize that something happened at that time. So soul retrieval, same with Native American practice and curanderismo, you go back through a trance method to go back in time and witness your story in a third person perspective. Once you go back and you, let's say, rescue your soul fragment back to the current present timeline, there are certain plants that allow you to, let's say, retain that experience in a better way, as in like, obviously the work is energetic, yet plants assist you in retaining that in your nervous system. So kind of bringing the nervous system back to wholeness through plants. So specific plants, resins, and tools are applied to that specific process, for example. And there's so many. There is like, a plethora. And every curandero and curandera use their own ecosystem as what they harvest and use. So
Mhm.
let's say sometimes bitter plants are used for specific possessive states that occurred because of susto. So for example, let's say the susto is due to abuse, which is obviously a big trauma. If that abuse occurred and an entity or spirit was attached to that part of your soul in that timeline, bitter plants are often used to detach the entity in that process, for example, consuming them internally and externally because they have a presence no matter what. Some
Hmm.
people even do like washes, bitter washes on the skin, and so to kind of like help the body come back from that and shed, the layer that is still attached to that potential personal reality of that time,
Do
right?
they, is there intrinsic capacity for the bitters to do that kind of work, or is that sort of like because of the partnering with the consciousness of the curandera?
I think both. I think that's a great question. I think both. Sometimes the pure intent of the person to heal is enough to bring like a superconductor energy to the plant.
Hmm.
If the person has like a true surrendered open vessel to be willing to take that step for themselves, then it will happen naturally, regardless of the curandera or curandero there to serve.
So yeah, let's keep going with the
Yeah.
whole arc of the healing relationship, since there's a kind of
Mhm.
weaving of like the deeper levels of
Yeah.
different ruptures and trauma, and then sort of the
Mhm.
repair with particular plant allies. And how does that tend to unfold over time?
Exactly. And so another one that's very classic, which associates to that, is called empacho. So empacho is funny because empacho in Spanish often is used as empachado, meaning like, let's say you ate too much ice cream or candy and you're just like filled with nausea and disgust because you just ate too much sugar or something. So empachado usually means that. But empacho shamanically is similar, as in it represents like a bottled emotional state, like an emotional state that's tightened into the stomach specifically. So let's say someone comes in to get a healing experience and the digestion and digestive system is what's observed out of balance. And so that's where the curandero can, let's say, assess if it's empacho, meaning that those emotions have not received a release. They're still bottled in there, creating a feeling of like empachado, as in like, that nausea chronically. And you have manifestations of that physically as well, like being filled with nausea, bloating chronically, feeling like, just anything that you eat kind of upsets your stomach. That is very much a nervous system connection as well. So that's where you can see a lot of like naturally the nervous system herbs tied to that specific diagnostic. So empacho really can be healed with all the nervines. It can also, like a lot of the glycemic regulating plants are also really powerful in this process. There's usually like a tough time, metabolizing or having the insulin arc settled and regulated. So if you witness that within that healing process, a lot of the classics are associated to that, like gynostemma, which I'm drinking right now, is a great one to use in those states, for example. Another one that I can think of that is also a digestive connection, as in disease states, is bilis, which is more like anger, bitterness, and resentment. And here is where the bitters can also really help. So bilis is very much like empacho, and in the sense that it's more of the fire expression of a digestive disharmony. So bilis is when there's too much bile produced due to anger, excessive resentment over time, and just like disturbed bile, meaning you can't access the nourishment of food, right? Food just passes through, it's burnt quickly, there's too much fire in the digestive system. Unlike empacho, it's more like the water side of that imbalance. So meaning things are retained, mud is created. And so having a muddy digestive system means usually that, things are stuck and stagnant. It can also lead to like, whether it's constant diarrhea or constipation, one or the other consistently. And if you really think about it, both of these things are extremely common in a collective level. And both of them are caused by strong nervous system disharmony. And I think we're all bombarded with so much information continuously now on such a mass systemic scale that obviously we're going to get consequences just from that, just from the environment that we're in. So it's not just like, oh, wow, I had a trauma and I was 8 years old, and it's not always tied to that. It can also be tied to place. Like, where are you living? Is it really appropriate for you to continue being there if your nervous system is in disharmony, causing these intense energetic states in your digestive system, which obviously then lead to physical manifestations. So those are just some examples. So again, nervines are excellent for both of these, for both empacho and bilis, and they're often assigned naturally to that because a calm nervous system will just make you thrive naturally, right? So a lot of the classics can be like passion flower that you find all over Latin America, also in the southern US, even in Italy and Europe, there is so many kinds of varieties. And it's just a classic that has been used for hundreds or thousands of years. It's one of my personal favorites. Same with skullcap, more of a European, but now becoming more native to the Americas. You can often find in different places. Even valerian, that's also used a lot in South America. It's used for intense states of like irregularity, deep anxiety, or deep bitterness and anger. Valerian can be an excellent medium for that as well.
Well, this is truly fascinating to get sort of the inside track on all working with all these specific herbs. And I also want to just ask you about the role of ritual, since I know rituals, ancestral rituals, often play a very important role in curandera practice, and just maybe share a little bit about that overall philosophy and how this also works with the energetics of healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's many rituals that, are practiced across the Americas, and they're really profound. And something that has been so interesting to witness is that a lot of these rituals have a common thread, even across the landmass of Latin America, which is, ginormous. And you see that a lot of the classic, templates are used in a very shared way and very commonly found across all this territory. So that's how I found it fascinating, how a curandera in, let's say, the Amazon was doing very similar practices than the curandera in Mexico, which is thousands upon thousands of miles apart. So anyway, so we can do one right now where I love to do just to ground myself in moments of distress and moments where you feel like, things are getting out of control, or you received intense news about something in your life. So a classic practice would be to ground your feet on the ground, on the floor and the soil, ideally outside. trying to find a tree near you, and if not, maybe plant, fresh air, something that's near you that is outside in the living world. And within that meditation, with your feet planted on the soil, you start visualizing internally all this blossoming happening in your body. So you close your eyes and you really ground your feet down into the earth, and you start feeling like the base of your spine is like this golden egg inside your body. And you have this golden egg sprouting the energy upwards towards your spine, going all the way up. And you feel as if this rod in your body extends all the way up several meters over your head. And you just naturally feel where it's inclining, and you connect. Where is it leaning towards? What are you feeling? Are you feeling like your body's going forwards or backwards, side to side? And you kind of start rocking your body a little bit to kind of get it back into this flow state that you're in. It allows like the rigidity to melt. You really start to localize where in your body you're feeling that exactly. As you're visualizing that, you're obviously doing very deep breaths, and you're connecting deeply to the energy of the plant, tree, or just the air where you're at. And as you're attuning to that, you really start visualizing specific elements. And this is where it's really powerful to do visualization. Let's say you're having a specific issue with somebody, and you start imagining like this rose in front of the person, place, or thing that is causing this distress. A rose, or it can be a specific flower that has a lot of petals. And as you're unraveling person, place, or thing, an issue disassociated from your body, you start removing a petal as the flower gently rotates in one direction. Usually clockwise is what's used to energize something. Counterclockwise as when you're de-energizing something. So for example, if it's a specific disease, you want to do counterclockwise, meaning you want it out of your body. If you do clockwise, it's when something is depleted and needs nourishment. So as you focus that flower in front of you, I love the rose specifically just because it's so deeply symbolic to the spiritual path. And it has so much history and beauty and magic in all of these traditions. And so as you're peeling each petal, slowly synchronize it with your breath, and naturally you'll start receiving a lot of imagery. Still keep that focus on the flower, and as you receive the imagery, allow that to be the information and clarity that, you know, what you're meant to do that day, the next day, that evening, whether it's calling somebody. But oftentimes what people perceive is like they start watching a movie of their own life. And the deeper you go into this practice, you'll start seeing more and more. This is a classic way to motivate just psychic energy. You start feeling more deeply intuitive. You have like this fierce sight. And the faster you learn to drop in, you can do this within a minute. Sometimes it might take 15 minutes, sometimes a half hour, depending on how intensive the situation is. But just use that flower as like the blessing of that moment. And what's powerful about the flower is that flower energy in medicine just naturally mirrors what is meant to be seen. There's something about it. It's some interesting secret and ancient knowing about it that is used in that sense. So as you ground it out, you receive what you needed to receive. You go for as long as you need. You bring the energy back, and you allow the flower to give you a specific color. And you allow that color to go back into the rod and back into the golden egg at the base of your spine. And you breathe it in and you breathe it out. It's very important that you seal the energy when you're done, and that you're grounded and planted in the ground. Ideally not a floor, but you can do this anywhere, anytime. And it's important that you seal it, because if you leave your vessel open, you don't want things to naturally get in there as you go back to your everyday life. So that is a powerful, you know, intuitive cultivation meditation that just has helped me immensely in receiving deep clarity in moments of intensity and distress. And it's also really powerful to do it with people. If you're in a group and let's say you're gathering to problem solve something, doing it together as a group is extremely powerful, and you just get, you know, riddled with chills because you understand how everybody's energy is key to this, and it just becomes like that much of a bigger vessel of energy in that moment. So that is a classic process that I've learned with a teacher a long time ago, and it's just been really, really powerful to use in these moments, and I still do it to this day. And I've learned it since I've been like 16 years old. I've been doing that visualization, and it's just been a really powerful one that I feel has helped many when I share with them.
It's really fascinating. Well, it's great practice, and I encourage everybody to follow what you've just shared and go ahead and do that sometime after this call. I was sort of drawn to ask it a little bit more. I found this in the idea of like the spiraling clockwise versus counterclockwise very interesting in terms of like the actual deeper structure of reality. Like, what's your understanding of like why a clockwise versus counterclockwise have differential effects on energy like that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's like imagine if you're moving or you're like captaining a boat, and you have like this wheel. So if you're moving a certain direction or the other, you can imagine it in that way. Like you could even embody it in that moment in the meditation. You're moving the vessel a certain way. And so the mind is so powerful that that movement and that direction will really like impulse the energy there. So it really works. It's really powerful. Same when going to sleep. Let's say if you're lying in bed and doing a very small invocation to just put yourself to bed or trying to put yourself to bed. Same thing, if you kind of like use your own mind to go in different directions, you'll start feeling different things just by going one direction versus the other. But I really encourage you to try it. And it's very traditional actually to several practices. I believe Reiki is very similar with that too, where they use counterclockwise and clockwise to de-energize or energize.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Well, I wanna ask a little bit just more about since the very holistic philosophy, the Curandera philosophy, just about other dimensions of like sort of the journey of towards back to health. You're identifying ruptures, working with plants and allies, creating ritual processes of reconnection and spiraling energy. So maybe just share a little bit more about the overall, like what is the state that we're moving towards? How does health become a sort of more multidimensional thing versus just the absence of disease, and a little bit more about, indigenous philosophy and practice on how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting you say disease because, illness, going back to that original conversation, like illness is that rupture in relationship. So illness is still a wonderful messenger and it is perceived as that, as a messenger to understand where the disharmony is. So if you are someone with, some sort of illness, whether it's chronic or acute or spontaneous, it's important to understand that it's a messenger in this process.
Hmm.
And I know sometimes it's really hard to cultivate that patience. But this is where, going back to the plática, it's really important that the body is attuned to that state of receivership, that gratitude, not gratitude as in like what has become in modern day reality. I feel like even the word gratitude, sometimes I don't like to use it because it just like demystifies its powerful potency. Like gratitude has been practiced as a healing tool for so long because it dilates the body. It is that state of receivership. You receive bigger transmission just by being in gratitude. You can even see it in churches or specific places of worship where gratitude is used as like a messenger, a vehicle to receive information, other than just like, oh, I am grateful. And, there is like almost a disharmony in how it's been taught in modern reality, in my opinion. But all things considered, I feel like that gratitude is what allows for that state of receivership to be brought into a state of illness. And so I just want to speak to that and how important that is to the curandera's path, how gratitude and using states similar to gratitude are what infuses the body with reverence and abilities and these healing tools, these healing abilities in general. So gratitude as a state of being just yields that bigger reverence. Curanderas didn't need a clinical trial to assess that gratitude will dislodge grief from the heart, or even gratitude dislodging fear out of the gut. If you really think about it, gratitude just disarms the body so quickly.
Hmm.
True gratitude, it dislodges all these emotions so quickly that your true state just shines instantaneously once embodied and understood in this higher frequency way, not just that emptier gratitude that's now being kind of tossed around in new age circles where it's not filled with emotion. When it's truly filled with that emotion, you can see big transmission happen. So that gratitude is what allows for bigger reverence, and both of gratitude and reverence have a similar vibrational frequency if you really feel it and tune into it, kind of like high states of joy, true happiness, that kind of bigger fulfillment that's filled with energy. And so it is used as a catalyst. And it is a no-brainer if you think about it. So it can come all down to that if gratitude is expressed. even in moments of tension and disruption. Gratitude just brings it back very
Mm.
quickly.
Well, it kind of circles back around to where diagnosing what was the rupture, what was the breakdown of relationship, and then gratitude is a sort of a repair, and and the reverence is sort of like
Exactly.
reweaving the connections that were once broken.
Truly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It bridges the gap.
Yeah. Well, I want to circle back a little bit with the healer as gardener philosophy, which I think is so useful as an approach, and just other dimensions of sort of embracing. Also, most people watching are probably not professionals in this arena, so embracing that perspective on your own kind of health and well-being. Like, what are some ways you can turn that into practices, actions where you're sort of gardening your health, if you will?
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Gardening your health. Yes. We've become such like a mechanical, society. Modern day reality is very much a mechanical system, and it has its power. It's very functional. It gets things done. It understands very fundamental things. Science can be really beautiful in its own way to receive that confirmation. Yet I believe that by us as a modern day species moving back into more of like caretaking the ecosystem from that gardener perspective, we can come into mass healing, whether it's caretaking our forests, understanding the indigenous way of how do we caretake of our forests is so simple. Even animals, how animals, including humans and their role in the ecosystem, that truly is needed to be understood politically and systemically, so much so that we can learn from indigenous communities. And we will speak heavily in the class about that, where how indigenous people and their cosmologies across Latin America have this fundamental understanding of like our role with nature. And that's where I believe that, the gardener is like a simple way to explain the role, like what your role is within the ecosystem, whether what we believe it is as a mechanic perspective, right? Right now, we're like problem solving the ecosystem even as a mechanical way, whether it's like trying to do the climate crisis or catastrophic events. It's not just a mechanical solution. We have to embrace it like a gardener now as a collective together, because sometimes the problems are so massive that we feel like our impact is insignificant. And that's where the gardener allows us to understand that it is massive. If we come together, our role in the ecosystem can be significant and impacted quickly in the ecosystem if we come together as gardeners. So we will definitely speak on that and how indigenous cosmology is ancient and naturally has understood that to keep balance with nature and not allowing for nature's wrath, essentially, to come in the way it has, just to bring balance back. So it'll be very fascinating to travel through these worlds together.
We're super excited for your upcoming course, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes here. But I also wanted to ask you a little bit about the ancestors, and so the notion of like the ecosystem, really sort of we're part of a much larger ecosystem of ancestry, and that the reconnection with that is really vital to our health and well-being. So maybe share a little bit about your perspective coming out of traditions you've trained in, and why that what we can do to kind of reweave that ancestral connection in a way that really is healing.
Exactly. One big example I can think of is not empacho, sorry, despacho. Despacho is when you do offerings to the land, right? And that has a significant impact to your ecosystem. All indigenous peoples that I've ever worked with through Latin America have a very clear despacho process. And there's different words to despacho, but I think most people would know what that is within the curanderismo reality. But a lot of these land offerings are consistent and they happen ongoing. So let's say there's a beautiful grandmother tree within the ecosystem of this specific tribe place, or people that live around specific places, or specific energetic power places have been noted. There's a lot of offerings being left to there, and there's usually offerings of all kinds. There can be consistent food being dropped off, bringing water back if it is a dry place, so like bringing specific native species to that area has also been done by indigenous peoples forever. Even though they're avid wildcrafters and all the things, they also plant and spread specific plants to bring specific water and energy back to places. And which seems kind of obvious nowadays, but now if you think about it, just landscaping specific plants that are not native to the area just because they're beautiful or because they're at Home Depot or something has actually created a mass disruption in the ecosystem just by the pollinators that are used to that native garden, right? So things like that are really important to witness. And so I also love how in the despacho process, there's also, specific sacrifices that happen. And that doesn't just mean, like necessarily bloodletting, like in traditional practice, like the Maya and others. But it can also be like where animals are killed as an offering to then eat as a community. So I think that in itself, just like going back to relationship, the relationship of food as a community done in specific places and harvested with so much gratitude and reverence is a completely different ecological consequence just by that specific ritual, right? And we call it ritual now, but to them, this is everyday life. You know, they, whether it's hunting, whether it's bringing the animal back to like take the skin off or process in different ways, it is done in these specific places in reverence. So that in itself is so beautiful. And it can be part of a despacho too, but it can also be just a way of life, you know. So despacho, just to go back to the clarity of that, it's more one specific offering to the land. And there's also despachos that go, you know, monthly, some are yearly, some are, you know, every so often. And sometimes it involves like the entire community. Sometimes it's just like someone in their home with their specific niche family. So despacho can mean many different things in that sense, but it is just beautiful that just that reverence to sharing that and those, let's say those sacrifices or even the food that nourishes you is done in that despacho-like way for the tribe. So I just love those cosmologies because it just brings back that community component and coming back together in these huge ways that would be so healing for our modern day society right now, right?
Well, Adriana, you're an amazing emissary for the more ancient worldview, blending with the modern in ways that really can help heal it. And you are really so it's so illuminating to kind of see the world through your eyes. So I want to spend some time talking about your upcoming course, since it's a really unique way to get this deeper transmission. It's really not just a set of recipes; it's a way of being in right relationship with plants, with animals, with our human allies in a way that's really about wholeness. And so it's a deeper approach to the whole field of working with plants. And so we are very blessed that Adriana has agreed to teach this course. I'm excited about it. It's called the Curanderas Apothecary. Cultivate well-being with plant medicines, healing rituals, and ancestral folklore from Central and South America. So it's really going to take this holistic, multidimensional, deeply indigenously rooted perspective on how to restore wholeness and healing in a way that really addresses all levels. So I'd love for you to share, Adriana, your perspective on some of the intentions you'd like for what people come away with, and then let's go through the modules.
So I'm so excited for this course. This is like the continuation master course of a course we taught actually I taught with you guys several years ago, also and called Indigenous Plant Medicines. But this will be a deeper dive and more of a master class on Central and South American curanderismo. So really diving deep into Latin American roots and different processes, ancestral rituals, plants, herbalism. And you don't have to be an herbalist to participate yet. This will give you so much illumination into plants that are so popular that might even be in your kitchen cabinet right now that you would have not ever even thought that it came from, you know, cultures throughout the Americas. So I'm very excited to go into the depths of this and share the indigenous cosmologies for, you know, a way of life and a way to relate to community and as a way to just, you know, perhaps use as a tool to allow for a bigger transmission for yourself and your highest self.
I love that. So the whole course is laid out in detail at the URL indigenousplantmedicine.com, indigenousplantmedicine.com. Module 1 is called Indigenous Healing Cosmologies, Discovering Healing Through Relationship.
So like we were talking, we will dive deep into different cosmologies. We will be zoning in on specific tribes that are currently living and also ancestral tribes that passed and understanding how they view the world. So we will go deep into belief systems, you know, deities, spirits of nature, relationship to nature, processes to engage with nature, a meditation to deepen, similar to what I taught, but in a different way. We will also go through different practices. You'll have take-home practices that you can engage with yourself in your own time. So I'm really excited for this specific one because it'll be more of the bigger cosmologies and belief systems of different curanderismo traditions.
Module 2, The Architecture of Disease, Learning How Curanderas Recognize Imbalance.
Module 2. So we will go deep into the disease states that have been viewed by different curanderos and curanderas across time. So we will go into bilis like we were talking about and understanding true remedies that can support that. We will go into case studies, different people that have experienced this and received healing processes in different ways. We will go into all the other ones that, you know, curanderos have used and pointed to for millennia. So this will be one of my favorite actually modules because we'll go deep into diagnostics and also how to perceive different imbalances.
Module 3, Plants of Power, Digestion and Microbial Resilience, Strengthening Your Foundation for Vitality.
This will also be very juicy. We will go into dietas, the shamanic dietas, different kinds of dietas. You might have heard the word dieta through different plant medicine communities, but dieta translates into multifaceted dietary protocols that you can use at home or with different curanderos. So we will speak deeply into, different dietary processes such as, 10 to 15-day cleanses, 30-day cleanses, year-long cleanses that curanderos do to get, attuned to these really deep energetic states. We'll also talk about like classics like bitters and resins used to purge the body, parasites, which is a common problem in the rainforest, and so on. And I know a lot of people love to talk about parasites now, so we will talk a lot about how to cleanse properly and safely.
Module 4, Heart as Axis, Working with Plants for Heartbreak, Grief, Fear, and Emotional Healing.
This is also one of my favorite ones because it speaks to the heart as the axis mundi, meaning the threshold of where spirit infuses the body. So we will be talking about cardiovascular tonics, herbs, and rituals in order to open the heart, amazing states, emotional states like gratitude that just allow for that bigger widening state to receive deeper transmissions. So it'll be a deep botanical class. It also includes rituals on how to open the heart and become porous.
And finally, Module 5, Working with Spirits, Plant Teachers, and Dreaming Traditions for Guidance and Protection.
So this is also a really popular class that a lot of people have requested over time, which is all the visionary plants. So these are all the classic entheogenic plants that are used for visionary states. These are also plants that support the nervous system to receive these visions and dreams and dreamscapes without necessarily going into a full-blown ceremony. So we will speak about a lot of the plants that have, there are analogs to the classic master plants and how to use them on an everyday basis safely. We will also speak a lot about the traditions of ceremonies, plant ceremonies, and how you can do them at home as well.
What a fantastic program. I think this is it's a holistic initiation rather than just like a set of recipes it's really just like a whole worldview that you're distilling in these 5 very powerful ways that really can catalyze so much healing. So it's again, it's all at indigenousplantmedicine.com. And I want to share a few other things about the program. So there will be 5 90-minute live sessions with Adriana, each is sort of a masterclass transmission in the philosophy and practice that can guide you. There's time to ask your questions live. You also get recordings of every session with video and audio, as well as word-for-word transcripts. There are weekly practices that you can do at home. There's a community group to support you and deepen your connection around the world. There's a small group time to connect with other participants as well. And I also want to say there's a number of extra bonuses that Adriana has been generous in sharing with us for this program as well. There's a PDF chapter from her upcoming book called The Rainforest Herbal Apothecary. You want to share more about that?
Yes, I'm really excited for that. So the book launches in September, and this book is all about what we're going to be talking about, but in a deep encyclopedic-ish way, woven with ritual and magic, of course. But this book is going to be coming out, published by Hay House, and I'm really excited to transmit this to the community because it's a lot of the classic Latin American remedies that are hardly ever spoken about. There's hardly any books on Latin American herbalism. So this is an attempt to bring the classics into an easy way that you can just learn from and use as a guide, as in when you're in the rainforest, you're able to search up the plant and know how to use it, what its medicinal actions are, and more specifically, traditional actions, which is what a lot of the information is being lost. So my attempt with this book is to really bring back information, folk traditions that have, are basically in extinction or lost or almost lost. So I'm really excited to bring this, and you'll get to have a teaser with a chapter.
Beautiful. The second bonus, which is on the page as well, is called our Community Gut Cleanse. It's a 20% off a 5-part course that Adriana offers through her own entity. And Adriana, will share a little bit about the 20%, the Community Gut Cleanse?
Yes, so this is actually a wonderful class. If you're looking to deepen the understanding on parasites, digestive healing, and how to do deep cleansing at home safely, what recipes to use, and all the things. So this is a great class. There's also 5 recorded sessions that come along with it. that'll be part of the bonus process to this. So you'll get your parasite cleanse and gut cleanse. It's not just for parasites, by the way, but we've been calling it the para herb cleanse. And you can use it safely at home, guided by us. And you have access also to an herbal chat room where you can have, questions and anything you need to support your process as you cleanse.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So that's just one bonus. And then there's another bonus, which is actually very broad and gives you a lot of access to important organic herbs, botanical remedies, and ritual essentials. So Anima Mundi has an apothecary, and you get 20% off anything at Anima Mundi. So you want to share more about that?
Yeah, so animamundiherbals.com. We have a bunch of different kinds of herbs. As you can see, this is one of the walls of our Brooklyn store. So you'll have access to over 150 kinds of herbs that will assist you in this process, herbs that we will be talking about, rainforest herbs, and anything, you can name it. So I just wanted to extend this discount so you can feel you have access throughout the course and beyond.
That's awesome. And then there's one final bonus, which is our special bonus to really encourage you to take the time to tune in now. And if you get a yes to move forward, to go ahead and do so at indigenousplantmedicine.com. This is a whole ebook called Cycle Syncing that Adriana's created. You want to share more about that?
Yes, so we're launching that this week actually, and it's really exciting because it's an 80-page guide on how to use your menstrual cycle and essentially understand how to navigate it and around it. So it comes with a ton of recipes, guidance, foods, recommended foods to harmonize your cycle. Whether it's like for bad cramping or whether it's just to live more in sync to your cycle, this really allows for like a deeper connection with yourself.
Mm.
But just the recipes themselves within the guide are absolutely incredible. And yeah, I know people are just going to love it. It's really great.
That's a great extra bonus as well. And that's your special bonus if you sign up today by midnight. And again, it's all at indigenousplantmedicine.com. So given all the value, all the bonuses, we've kept it very accessible for price. It's just two payments of $137. You save about 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $249. The course is going to start September 29th and run Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. And we love the live format, so you can ask your questions live. It creates more community, and you can also get the full benefit if you just download and participate in the community virtually as well. So there's some great testimonials on the page from clients and students, as well as David Crow, who's such a key part of the whole Shift family. And Adriana is really just a real deal teacher, inspiring, deeply knowledgeable, and really walks her talk. So you're in great hands, and you will get, I think, a powerful transmission of a way of being that can be holistically informing your healing and your walk on this planet. So again, it's all at indigenousplantmedicine.com, and you'll get that special bonus on the cycle syncing when you sign up by midnight tonight. So Adriana, it's such a blessing to be with you. I love you just bring it. So thank you. And anything still on your heart you want to share with folks who are considering doing the course?
Well, I've been really looking forward to coming back to the Shift and teaching this class. Honestly, it's been a wonderful process over the years. And I just love the community element to it, the depth of it, and the authenticity that you as a platform bring. So I'm really excited to be part of this. And, it was really hard to carve out the time to really like be present. And that's what I wanted to do, just be very present with the community. And I really take it seriously. And I love the Q&As. I love the community process of these classes. So I will be fully there. And I'm really excited to go on this journey with you. These are practices that I want them to stay alive and inspire people, especially in today's world. It's really important that we stay connected and we create this sense of community. Yeah. So I'm really excited to join this process, and I'm really grateful for the Shift Network to do it with me.
Feeling is mutual. So thank you so much, Adriana. You're a blessing. And thank you all for joining. And if you'd like to move forward with the next step, you're warmly welcome to do so, indigenousplantmedicine.com, and you'll get the cycle syncing when you sign up by midnight tonight. So thanks so much.
Thank you.